next speaker is Junior. Now, Junior is going to be talking about harmony in a marriage relationship. Junior essentially runs her own, well, she does her own shows on Facebook. I think she does it almost Tuesdays and Thursdays. Modern Asian mother. And she herself is a mother to 5 amazing children. And she has her own parenting model that she's recognized for. Her content is quite unique and quite unconventional. She uses this word deviant. It depends on how you interpret it, but it's quite interesting and unique. And certainly engages people on a deeper level and gets that conversation out. So Junior has got a very, again, provocatively titled presentation called "Till Death Do Us Part." Over to you.
Yes. Thank you so much, Joseph. Wait, sorry. Can you? What do you guys see?
We see your slides, and we see
you see my slide. Do you see me? No.
Yes, and we hear you as well.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you. I mean, each and every one of you have been sharing so insightful stuff that I've just been writing down. It's gold nuggets, literally. So this is the title that was, that I am excited about sharing. Till death do us part. And then, I turned it around, and because there was a point in my life where it was part, otherwise dead. I would be dead, So I go by Modern Asian Mother, and I trust it's going to be insightful for you. So I would love to have interaction, and I will be asking you some questions, yeah? So the first one, a very quick share of who I am. I am an author of The Naked Parent, and what I write inside is, just my thoughts on how parenting is out of step in today's digital age and how we can align being relevant, okay? That's one. And I have 3 live shows on Facebook. I've got my own YouTube channel, Modern Asian Mother, where I discuss, my 3 shows talk about, the first one would be Experts Expose, where I bring in the experts and I get them to share on different aspects of parenting or for women self-love. The second one would be Mom's Confessions. So it's a candid time where we just share, we talk about things like, has your husband ever cheated and what you did? So it's just, getting moms to talk about things, because in Asia, we can get a little caught up with looking good, instead of sharing the real stuff that goes behind closed doors. And on Saturday, which is today, later, I will be having guests who will just be sharing about their life stories. For example, one of them is how she was a prostitute, and today she is a happy mother to 3 children because she found a man who truly loved her. So that's what I do professionally. And at home, like what Joseph already mentioned, I've got 5 amazing kids. And why I just put this slide is for you to know out there that outside and inside, I always remind myself that I'm the same person. So no persona, I'm not going to be that good looking, mom who has it all together. No, I'm going to share with you what really happened. So for you now, sorry, this is where we are. Where are you? Like in all fairy tales, they tell us and most fairy tales when I was growing up ended with, and they live happily ever after. So where are you? It doesn't matter whether you are actually married, even if you are in a relationship. Is the relationship something that you are happy with? Touch your heart happy, not surviving happy, like, yeah, it's fine, Or would you be living a nightmare? For me, I was living a nightmare 5 years ago. And I will share more of that later. No, let me just share now. So today you've seen the beautiful picture of 5 amazing kids, and I'm in love with that one man, same father of the 5 kids. But 5 years ago, I threw him out so many times. He came over at his sister's place, not just once, but multiple times. It's transformed today, and that's what I will be sharing with you, yeah? So I think one of the key areas why we grew apart is because when we first got married 14 years ago, we enjoyed each other's company. But as I began to take off on personal development, I remember I just went for courses and I just so enjoyed growing. And I tried to drag him along, but he was resistant. He was like, I'm fine, I'm happy. Why would I have to go with you? And in my mind, I was like, but this is a shared journey. Come on, you're my life partner. He had other, ideas about it. So where are you at now? Are you growing at the same pace as your partner? Are you growing faster than your partner? Is your partner growing faster than you? Or are you growing in different directions? Whether it's interest or whether it's just a lack of communication. Just take some time to just ask, like, with my partner, where am I? You don't have to tell anyone, but just for you, where are you now? So this is where I want to bring in the growth mindset. And I want to remind us, like, why I use this, right, is it's so easy often in today's digital age to capture everything on Instagram or to post the best Facebook pictures. And we get validation by the number of likes, But how I live my life is I always remind myself that my life is not just one picture, but it's an entire reel. And while people only post the positive, sometimes I remind myself to not smile for pictures, just to get in touch with how I really feel. And if I'm tired, I will really show a tired face, just to capture that and to remind myself that at the end of it all, people will say whatever they want to say. But I know my entire reel. And in any relationship, there will be ups and downs. So if you look at this reel, the fingers pointing, where we are such different people. He loves to snack while I'm the healthier partner. So we are so different. And while we are so different, the entire reel, what is it made up of? So words that I've realized, when our relationship hit rock bottom and I was like literally throwing his clothes at him, I realized that I would say things like, you will never change, or it's too hard. This relationship is really just too hard. And then I was like, why should I try? Because all the fairy tale tells us they live happily ever after. And they never tell us that it takes work, right? It's just, and I will cover 3 stages, from the enchantment stage. And then it stays that way, right? They don't actually dissect behind the scenes for us. And I actually reached many stages in my relationship with him where I was like, it's not worth it. I'm happier as a single mom out there without him. I'm done with his lies. I'm done with, our differences. It's irreconcilable. I remember actually checking with the lawyers to see on what legal grounds I could divorce him. That's how serious I was. But as I began to grow, I realized that my personal growth affected my marriage as well. And as I began to change my language towards him, that is why we have what we have today. So I began to look at him and, get that, hey, you know what? I believe in you. So on one side, you will see the fixed mindset comes with, everything is fixed. Things are static. It will never shift, But as I began just to change in my language, it's the growth mindset of like, you know what? I believe in you. I believe in us. And instead of saying it's so hard, because the fixed mindset is like, it shouldn't be so hard. It's the enchantment stage where if it's too hard, then it's probably wrong. But as I really got that struggles and challenges are just part of a journey. And instead of just focusing on the end product, to just enjoy the process, things actually took a turn for the better. And instead of why should I try? Every time we had a disagreement or every time there was a shout again, I'll be like, hey, you know what? I'm feeling this anger. Perfect opportunity to practice my personal development on myself. Like, how do I acknowledge my emotions and how do I use it as an opportunity for my personal development instead of looking good on the outside and having shambles at home. I always believe that the greatest battles are won and fought at home, And then, there are so many other words I could come up with. And instead of it's not worth it, to say to him every day, thank you for being my partner. So I want to cross out myths why relationships in general don't last, okay? We all have this romanticized ideal. At least I know I did. They live happily ever after, right? And then when the going gets tough, that's not supposed, something's wrong. It's either him or me or us, you know. And the other angle that I want to bring in is, what's your blueprint for a relationship? I remember for me, my dad cheated on my mom, so he had multiple partners. And as I witnessed that and other failed marriages, I grew up with relationships don't last. You know, it's too good to be true. There isn't someone out there who would love me for the rest of my life. And that's all in my unconscious, okay? And I bring it out to the forefront because as I began to realize that that's in my unconscious, I realized I was the one who was actively playing out my unconscious blueprint. Yeah. Naturally, without wanting to, but I was. Cumulative incompletions. This is key because, you know, often when there's a disagreement, it's easier to not talk about it, especially if one party is not ready. But leaving the many incompletions sort of like creates this built up, this mountain at the back. And that really damages relationships. Okay, communication is key. I will talk about it more in depth later. And I think the biggest is, it's so hard, you know. So maybe I should start writing books on they live happily ever after and the how they live happily ever after, because every relationship, whether it's with your partner, with your kids, with your colleague, takes work. And I think one of the greatest joys of working on a relationship is personal development. You know, as I set goals for my relationship, the goal is not just to have a wonderful, loving relationship, but for my personal growth, because the person that I would have to be would be altogether different, you know, in being able to just have this love relationship. So the 5 C's that I will very quickly cover is create. So that's how I salvage my relationship. I actually sat down to ask myself, what do I want? Okay. Communicate. What are the 3 key words? Connect. Specifically, the M, E, and P. Consistency, where we literally put a calendar, and commitment. And I will be talking about carefrontation, you know, because in any relationship, there will definitely be differences. And how do we approach this kind of differences? Yeah. So create. One night, I sat down and as I looked at my relationship, like this piece of drawing, I realized there was so much scribbles and drawing on it that it was impossible to create something newly. And what I really needed was a fresh sheet of paper, not bringing any of the past mistakes that him or I have been a part of, not bringing my prejudices against him or my negativity, but really I got out like a fresh sheet of paper and I asked myself, what do I want? And I got present to that I would want this man to be my best friend, to grow old with him. And as of the point, even as I was writing that, I'm going to be very candid. In my mind, it was like, it's not possible, because as of that moment, I saw so much of his faults. I was despising him. I was looking down on him. I was just so emotionally negative towards him and biased against him. But if it was a fresh piece of paper and I could have anything I want, I wouldn't want to change a partner. Because I knew then that even if I change a partner or even if I was single, this would be an area in my life that I would not have any victory over. So I created, you know what, if it's even possible that this enemy would be my best friend, that we would really engage deeply in dialogues, that even if he didn't want to grow, I would fully love and embrace him for who he was. And as I began to just write down the list, that is the easy part, yeah. I invite you on a quiet night, evening, afternoon to just spend time on any area of your life to look and just newly create, not from the past, but what do you want? A future that inspires you. And the second is where I would say communicate, where these 3 words, my 3 magic words, any guesses? It's not I love you. I think it's a bit overrated. I mean, I do say that to my family, like to Derek and the kids, but I realized that the 3 key words would be you, right? Like at the end of it, like what Stephen Covey says, listen first, seek first to understand and then be understood. So the 3 words I would say is, I began to just throw aside my ideals of what I think a relationship should be first, okay? After creating the list, I put that one side. I went to him, and this was the hard part. And I told him, I know I keep saying I want a divorce with you, and I want to start this conversation by asking you, what do you want in a relationship? And as I sat down, he poured out, right? Because I guess there was so much, after, I think then was like 6 years of marriage, there was so much buried, so much that we had just conveniently swept under the carpet. And as he shared, wherever he came from, I just listened. I didn't defend. I didn't, correct him. I just listened because this is just his point of view. And then I began to share with him my list. I showed him my list, and I was like, so this is what I would love you to be. And I have no idea how we're going to get there, because as of now, and I began to share, my listening of you is that you're someone who can't be trusted, tap, 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 tap. So the list went on. And then at the end of it, we created what's something that we both want, to work towards. So you, me, we. These are the 3 words I realize for any relationship. Even when I start routines at home with the kids, I always start with asking them, what would you like to have? And then I share what I would like to have. And together, we collaboratively come up with something that works for both of us. And then when I talk about connection, I want to cover just 3 areas, yeah. Mentally, like what I spoke about already, it's this growth mindset. When I saw my husband as this angry man, there was no way he could appear any differently from me. He couldn't be loving, he couldn't be faithful, he couldn't be all the other good things that he was, because I saw him as this angry man. But when I began to shift my view of him and see him as someone who's just growing, just like I am not perfect and I've got so many areas that I need to work on, he is also growing. And as I began to shift my focus, I got out another piece of paper and I began to write all his good stuff. I remember when I first did this, very candidly, the list of negative stuff was so long. The list of good stuff, I think, was less than 5, But as I began to just stop looking at the negative, right? And that's obviously the reason why our marriage was failing, and focus on his good points. This list, the good points, began to grow. Okay, so mentally, to just connect, to just focus on the positive, like what we all know, what we focus on expands. And I began to not just see him for just being faithful and a wonderful provider and supportive. The list just kept multiplying. And interestingly, when I stopped focusing on the negative, I began to see less of it. The second would be emotionally. So there would be times where one of the greatest grievance that I had with my husband was I felt emotionally he just didn't get me, right? I would be feeling down and he would be problem solving for me. Or I would not feel like having sex and he'll be like, oh, but that's something, So emotionally is where I got in touch with my emotions, and I began to share with him. And it's beautiful how the both of us began to individually get anchored in what our emotions were telling us instead of denying it, suppressing it, especially the negative ones. And as I connected with him, especially, so for example, the positive emotions are easy to embrace. It's the negative emotions that I realize I tend to ignore or shun or avoid. But as I began to embrace, for example, his anger or my anger, I got that emotions are just cluing us into things. So when he got angry, I just got, instead of being the reactive wife, I began to just got, okay, something's troubling him. And no longer did I react to his negative emotions, but I listened deeper for what his emotions were trying to tell him and me. Yeah. And then finally, physically, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. I think that's a wonderful book where I actually got that for my husband. So the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, and that's his. He needed to hear that he was a wonderful provider, that I loved him. And for me, I struggled with that because I would not say something that's not true, right? But like what I said, as I chose to focus on the positive, I began to just affirm him. I began to say things like, thank you for doing this, you know, to just appreciate him for very specific actions, like thank you for buying the tea for me. And as I began to expand on that, I realized that I was emotionally topping him up. And then the other four would be touch. So for him, he enjoys touch, right? So I began to just hug him more, allow him to hold my hands more. In the past, I would just brush it off because I'm so focused on doing things, and that's not my natural love language. What's natural for me though is quality time. For me, if you love me, then spend time with me. And if I love you, you become my priority in me just giving you time. The fourth one would be gifts. So, you know, find out what's your partner's or your kids' love language. You know, where gift is something that took me, where I had to learn gifts, because gifts is not mine. When my kids ask for things, I would be more practical and say, yeah, but why, you know? As I got how different children appreciated gifts, it doesn't have to be expensive. You know, I got like, it's fine to indulge them in a sweet every single day because that tops them up. And finally, being conversant in even the fifth one, which is acts of service. So acts of service is a game changer for me because I am someone who is very conversant in the first three and not the last two. And I never understood when my husband picked me up. You know, for me, it's like when he wants to pick me up, I'm like, no, it's fine. I'll take the public transport because it's faster and I didn't like to wait. But as I begin to allow him to love me his way, and I begin to speak his language. So I don't normally cook, right? But as I begin to realize that they appreciate it, or even spending time with the kids, studying with them, just supporting them and availing my services, my hands for them, that's how we really connected, you know? So mentally, emotionally getting in touch, and physically learning a different language from me so that I can talk the people I love out. I can speak their language instead of, you know, can you imagine I'm speaking in Mandarin and then the only language you understand is English? We would never be able to connect, yeah? And when I talk about consistency, so you know, I've got 5 kids. What we really got is, with all the good intentions, at the end of it, we really need to have a calendar, like a physical structure that works for us. Because otherwise, we get so caught up with the many mundane things in life. There's work to be done, there's errands to be run, there's this and that. And before we know it, how do I say? There's hardly time left for each other. And the time left that we have for each other, it's about discussing things to do. So when we actually sat down, we actually planned like every Friday is just going to be him and me without the kids. And when we go out, it's just going to be a meal time where we actually get to fall in love again, where the time spent together, it's not going to come from the past, but you know, like when you first date someone, it comes from a place of inquiry, of inquisitiveness, of finding out who are you newly. And as I found out who he was, what is so amazing is, remember I started by saying that I started on my growth journey and I was disappointed that he was not growing. I realized that his interest was trading. And it's so beautiful now how he takes time to takes courses on just trading, you know, and he's getting good at it, right? So while we have different interests, as we share, it's such a beautiful union to be deeply engaged in the interest of my life partner, my best friend. So calendar, it's not just a weekly date, I realize, but sometimes, so initially we started with weekly dates, right? But I realized that with weekly dates, sometimes on a daily basis, when we wait, you know, for 6 days, the weekly dates become a get-to-do list, you know, okay, we need to go for shopping for this, we need to buy this present, and then the romance is all gone. So what we've actually created is on a daily basis to really just connect, even just for 15 minutes, where it's not about the kids, where we just listen to each other's mentally, emotionally, and physically. And finally, what I mean by commitment is carefrontation. Remember I said there will always be differences in any real relationship. So carefrontation is a method where, you know, it can be clashes or, you know, hands coming together. So the 4 steps, yeah. Typically, there would be some things where I'm not too comfortable with him. And instead, in the past, I would go to him and tell him, you know, ta 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 ta. And naturally, his defenses, just in my looks, right? As I approach him, his defenses will all be up and he's like lashing back. So we never actually get anything solved. So carefrontation comes with 4 words. It's a concept that I learned from Lisa, a speaker, Lisa Williams, I think. Yeah. So the first step is literally to top the person up. You know, instead of starting a conversation at neutral or at negative, you know, to build them up first with genuine words. So when I come to him, so you can write these words out if you want. I tell him, you know what, I really admire you for this, or I really like that you did this. It's sincerely, yeah, not with flattery. But when we start the conversation, giving the other person at least 2 or 3 put-ups, we bring them up to a positive place already. And then I share with him, and this is not working for me. And I give it to him. So the second step is to ask, can we reach an agreement? The second step is to ask, I need your help on something. I need your support on something. So it's literally to build them up and then to give them the ball. So the ball is really in your court. This is not working for me and I want to deal with this. So I'm being very straight, very open about it. And after that, it's to share, is to hear from them and then to come up with a solution, you know. So the third step is, as we come up with a solution together, the last step is also to talk about what if you don't carry this out. So for example, he wants to lose weight. So that's an area that he's, you know, been grappling with for some time. And, you know, every time I see him snacking in the middle of the night, I'll be like, hello, you know, what's your commitment towards your weight loss is not being played out the way you intend it to be. That's how I used to approach it. But having learned these 4 steps of carefrontation and just affirming him in like getting him to talk about what he wants, you know, like getting him connected with the why he wants to feel good and look good on the inside for health reasons, right? And to live long. Finally, the 4th step is actually getting your partner to come up with, if you don't keep to this, you know, new agreement that we have, you know, then what do you suggest? So if it comes from them, there is a higher chance that they will carry it out. So for him, he said, if I don't do this, then no snack for the entire day. The next day, he's going to put himself on a strict diet. So it's my job then, you know, to just remind him with love, hey, this is what your commitment is. So instead of me coming down harsh and hard on him, like, you know, being, what's that word? Being condescending, it's literally to say, hey, I'm here to support you. I'm here to lift you up. And this is what you committed to, and it's not working for you. Yeah. So I want to thank each and every one of you for now. And I would love to hear if you have any questions.